Hi, my name's Lorene, and my son told me he was dying. Stage 4 cancer, he said. So I gave him every penny I'd saved for retirement. 3 weeks later, he posted pictures from a luxury resort in the Maldives. But what hurt more than the lie was realizing they never thought I'd fight back. That I'd go quietly. That I'd be too old, too proud, too afraid. They erased my name from my own will, laughed about it at dinner, called me a blessing on social media. You ever wonder what it feels like to be stolen from, not just your money, but your identity by your own child? Let me show you. It was 12:37 a.m. when the phone rang. Sharp, jarring, cutting through the stillness of my quiet house like a blade. I hadn't been sleeping, not really. At 66, sleep comes in pieces. My body gets tired, but my mind wanders, tracing grocery lists, wondering if the roof needs replacing, missing my husband in ways I stopped admitting out loud. I reached for the phone on instinct. Hello? My voice cracked from disuse. There was static for a moment, and then Travis's voice broke through. Mom, it's bad. I didn't know who else to call. My breath caught. Travis, what's going on? I got the results back today. Stage 4. It's cancer, Mom. Liver. They said it's advanced. Time stopped. My hand clutched the phone so tight my knuckles hurt. I could hear him trying to keep it together, but his words came in gasps. They're saying if I start treatment this week, there's a chance. But it's expensive. Insurance won't cover everything, and His voice cracked. I need help. I didn't ask for details. I didn't question. I didn't remind him that we hadn't spoken much in the past year, or that he'd brushed me off every Thanksgiving since Callista came into his life. I just sat there, listening to my son cry on the other end of the line, and I felt that old weight settle across my shoulders. The one I'd carried since the day I brought him home in a blue blanket and promised I'd keep him safe. How much do you need? I asked quietly. He hesitated. They said at least $150,000 to get started. I know it's insane to ask, but, Mom, I don't want to die. My heart clenched. That child, the one who once clung to my leg in the middle of a thunderstorm, had returned. Only now he was grown and afraid in a way I didn't know how to fix. I told him I'd figure it out, that I'd call him first thing in the morning, that we'd handle this together. When I hung up, I didn't go back to bed. I sat in the kitchen, the clock ticking louder than usual. Outside, the wind rustled dry leaves against the window. My coffee maker groaned when I turned it on, as if even it wasn't sure this was a good idea. By 8 a.m., I had my purse, my coat, and a printed statement of my retirement account clutched to my chest. I walked into my bank, greeted the teller I'd known for years, and asked to speak with Greg, the manager. He looked surprised. Everything all right, Mrs. Bly? Just need to move some money around, I said with a tight smile. He pulled up my account. $155,327 in your retirement account. How much do you want to transfer? All of it. He blinked. Are you sure? I mean, we can schedule periodic withdrawals if you're planning something long-term. No, I said. It's urgent. My son's sick. Greg's face softened. I'm sorry to hear that. We'll get it processed right away. As I signed the forms, I didn't feel proud or brave. I felt exposed, like I was stepping onto a bridge that might not be finished. But this was what a mother does, right? She gives, she hopes, she sacrifices. We don't ask for receipts. Back home, the silence felt heavier. I stared at my phone, waiting for a message from Travis. Something, anything. But it didn't come that day, or the next. Instead, my thoughts wandered back to a boy with scuffed sneakers and a toothy grin. Travis used to cry during sad movies, especially that scene in Old Yeller. He once fed a stray kitten behind our garage for weeks until we found out. That child, the one with jelly-stained fingers and a big heart, he wouldn't lie to me. I needed to believe that. A week passed before I ran into Dr. Hadley at the grocery store. We'd known each other since my courthouse days. He was bagging apples into a thin plastic sack when I approached. "Morning, Lorene," he smiled. "Still baking those lemon bars?" "Trying to cut back," I chuckled. "Say, have you seen Travis lately?" His brow furrowed. "Travis? Not in a long time. At least a year, maybe more." I blinked. "Oh, that's strange. He said he got diagnosed last week. Liver cancer, stage 4. Dr. Hadley paused, hand frozen mid-reach. "I haven't treated him for anything like that, Lorene. Last time he was in, it was for strep throat." The air in my lungs went stale. My grip tightened on the cart handle. I must have smiled, I don't remember. But 3 weeks had passed since that phone call, since the quiet transfer of nearly everything I had saved, since I told myself I wouldn't question my son's desperation. I hadn't heard much from Travis since. A few short texts, nothing more than vague acknowledgments. "Thanks again, Mom. Starting the meds soon." Or, "Feeling rough today. We'll call when I'm stronger." But the call never came, and I didn't push. You don't pester someone who's supposedly fighting for their life. On a mild Saturday morning in March, I was folding towels in the laundry room when my phone buzzed. A message from Elaine, a woman I'd known for over 30 years from our church choir. Her text read, "Isn't this your Travis and Callista?" Attached was a screenshot. I opened it. There they were, on a sun-drenched beach, framed by crystal blue water. Travis in a linen shirt, drink in hand, smiling like a man without a care in the world. Callista, draped in a silk wrap, her oversized sunglasses reflecting nothing but ease. They clinked glasses mid-toast. My son's wrist bore a distinct white band, the kind they give at luxury resorts. Beneath the image, the caption, "Thanks to our incredible parents for this dream honeymoon. We're beyond grateful." Dream honeymoon. I stared at the photo, the caption, the comments, heart emojis, clapping hands, messages like, "You guys deserve this," and "What amazing parents you have." I sat down hard on the laundry bench. My fingers trembled, not from anger, yet, but from disbelief. The way you feel when you realize you've walked into a conversation halfway through and everyone else knows the joke except you. I didn't respond to Elaine's message. I didn't call Travis either. I just sat there, frozen, the dryer humming beside me like white noise I couldn't escape. Later that evening, I opened the wine I'd been saving for Easter and poured a generous glass. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat by the window, watching the neighborhood darken, phone in hand, scrolling through the post again and again. I never got a thank you, not a phone call, not a card, not even a text, not when I wired over a lifetime of safety net. And now this public theater of gratitude for generous parents, had me starring in a lie I never auditioned for. I started to second-guess everything. Had I misheard him? Was the illness exaggerated? Or had I simply walked into the biggest manipulation of my life and handed them the key? The next morning, I went to the farmer's market like I always do. It's my one ritual that grounds me. Organic tomatoes, fresh bread, a few kind faces. But that day felt different. 2 women I vaguely recognized from book club paused when they saw me. One of them whispered a little too loudly, "That's her! You saw the post, right? The Maldives trip." The other giggled, "She must be sitting on a fortune." I smiled politely and walked past them, pretending not to hear, pretending the blood in my cheeks wasn't boiling. I felt like someone had hung a sign around my neck. Gullible. Available for financing your fantasy. I made it through the market with shaking hands, went straight home, and logged into Instagram for the first time in months. I found Callista's page. Public, curated, beautiful. Their whole relationship looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. Hashtags like "so blessed," "how couple goals," and "how grateful" for the life we have. Post after post painted a tale of struggle, then triumph. "We started with nothing," one caption read, paired with a photo of Travis and Callista in their first apartment. "But we never stopped dreaming." Nowhere was there a mention of the phone call, the illness, or the $155,000. They were building a story, one where I was the silent, generous benefactor. The invisible ATM. The last straw was a reel, a short video montage of their honeymoon, clinking wine glasses, luxury dinners, boat rides with wind-blown hair, set to soft acoustic music. At the end, Callista looked into the camera and said, "When people believe in you, it changes everything." I closed the app. That night, I started saving screenshots. Every photo, every caption, every comment. I created a folder on my desktop and named it Truth. I wasn't just being used, I was being displayed, like a trophy in a story I never agreed to star in. I didn't sleep much after that post. The image of my son basking in the sun while thanking loving parents echoed in my head like a bad song stuck on repeat. There was no love in that caption, just a carefully packaged version of reality, tailored for likes, hearts, and hashtags. By early April, I had decided it was time to look Travis in the eye. I texted him, asking if we could grab coffee, my treat. He replied within minutes. "Sure, been meaning to catch up anyway." We met at a local cafe on Broadway, one he liked for its big windows and endless supply of iced lattes. I arrived first and chose a booth near the back, away from too many ears. When he walked in, he looked tan, well-fed, rested, not sick, not even close. "Hey, Mom," he said with a smile like nothing had happened. "You look good." I gave a polite nod. "You too." After some small talk about the weather, I asked softly, "How are you feeling? Have you started treatment?" He looked at his coffee cup, spinning it in his hands. "Yeah, it's been rough. But, one day at a time." "Which hospital?" I asked. He paused. "It's private, out of network. That's why the costs are so high." I leaned in a little. "Travis, I saw the pictures." His face froze for a second, barely, but I caught it. "What pictures?" "The ones from your honeymoon, the Maldives." He let out a breath and leaned back. "Oh, that." I waited. It wasn't what you think," he said, lowering his voice. "I needed a mental break. Callista insisted. I was spiraling, and that trip saved me." "Was there ever a diagnosis?" He looked offended. "Wow. I tell you I'm fighting for my life, and now you're grilling me like I'm a criminal?" I didn't speak. He raised his voice slightly. "You care more about the damn money than my well-being, don't you?" "God, Mom, you're acting like I stole from you." I felt my hands tremble under the table. Not from fear, but from restraint. "I didn't say that," I said calmly. "You didn't have to. This whole interrogation, you're making me feel like crap when all I did was try to survive." I sat there, watching him twist the truth like it was a napkin in his hand. "You never once thanked me, Travis. Not a call, not even a text." He shrugged. "Did you do it to be thanked or to be remembered as the mother who saved her son?" The words hit like ice water. I left the cafe without finishing my coffee. He didn't follow. He didn't even look back. Outside, the air felt stale. I walked down the street trying to shake the heaviness. I wasn't 2 blocks away when I heard someone calling my name. It was Gloria, my neighbor. She was holding a bag of takeout, probably headed home from picking up dinner. "Lorene, hey, how are you?" she said, cheerful as ever. I tried to smile. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "I hope you don't mind, but my husband said Travis was telling some folks the other day, something about your health?" I blinked. "My health?" She hesitated. "He said you weren't going to be around much longer, that he figured he'd better make use of things while he still could. I didn't believe it, of course, but I thought you should know." I nodded slowly. "Thank you, Gloria." I walked home. Not from exhaustion, from fury. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, turning everything over in my mind. The phone call, the Instagram posts, his tone, the cafe. I pulled out my laptop, created a spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, what he said. Column C, what really happened. Column D. Evidence. Then I opened a folder, started saving screenshots again, labeled each file, saved PDFs of posts, copied comments. I didn't just want closure anymore. I wanted facts, timelines, proof. I wasn't crying. I was documenting. At some point past midnight, I looked at the clock, rubbed my eyes, and whispered aloud, "You think I'm old, weak, and blind. Let's see how blind I really am." I stopped being his mother that day. I started being the woman he should have never underestimated. It started with a letter that didn't belong to me. The envelope was plain, unassuming, addressed to Mrs. Callista Kane, but the postal carrier had tucked it into my box without a second thought. Maybe out of habit, maybe fate. I don't know. What I do know is that I almost tossed it into the pile of circulars and catalogs without a glance. But something about the way it was stamped, priority mail, official return address from the bank I'd trusted for decades, made my fingers pause. I opened it. Inside was a formal letter confirming the successful establishment of a non-revocable trust. The funds, my funds, had been generously gifted by Lorene Bly to her son and daughter-in-law, and now existed legally under the authority of Callista Kane. It detailed transfer dates, account numbers, and a clause indicating I had relinquished any and all access or control. I read it 3 times before the paper slipped from my hands and onto the floor. I wasn't shaking because of my age. It was something deeper and unraveling. It felt like watching your own name get written in invisible ink, fading with each passing second, until even you question if you were ever there in the first place. I sat in that silence, stunned. My house, once filled with warmth and memories, now pressed in on me with cold, unfamiliar edges. I got up, walked into my bedroom, and opened the drawer where I kept my original retirement documents. There they were, neatly labeled, professionally notarized, signed 10 years ago. My name printed clearly in black ink. Lorene Bly. Sole beneficiary. Protected assets. A legacy. I pulled up the new documents, the ones enclosed in that wretched letter. My name was gone, replaced, deleted. I whispered out loud. They didn't just take my money, they took me off the record. It was the first time I realized that erasure doesn't always happen loudly. Sometimes it happens through paperwork, sometimes it's buried in fine print, and sometimes it wears your son's name in bold font on a trust document. Later that afternoon, I walked out to the mailbox, trying to breathe, trying to find something normal. Gloria, my neighbor from 2 houses down, waved as she walked her dog. "You're amazing, you know that?" she called out. I blinked. "Sorry?" "The trip, the honeymoon. What a gift. Travis and Callista looked like royalty in those pictures. You're a blessing, Lorene." I smiled, because that's what women like me are taught to do. I nodded, muttered something polite, then turned back toward my front door. Inside, I walked straight to the desk and opened my computer. Pulled up that Instagram post, the one with the champagne flutes, the ocean in the background, and the caption that made me a fairy tale character in someone else's story. I printed it. Then I opened a folder and wrote across it with a black marker, "Exhibits, lies I didn't consent to." I slid the paper in. That night, I sat down at my dining table, the one Travis used to do his math homework on, the one where he spilled spaghetti sauce when he was 11 and cried because he thought I'd be mad. I opened my email and began typing. "Travis." I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keys, but I couldn't send it. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I knew he wouldn't read it. Instead, I opened a new document. The title, Timeline of Events, Misappropriation and Emotional Abuse. I started listing the facts. Dates, calls, bank transfers, screenshots, receipts. Every piece of the puzzle documented. Not for revenge, not even for justice, but because I refused to be written out of my own life without a fight. When I finished the timeline for the night, I reached for a photo on the shelf. It was me, holding Travis in the hospital, his eyes barely open, his hand gripping my pinky like it was the only thing keeping him anchored to the world. I looked at that baby. Then, I turned the frame over, face down on the table. I didn't know what I would do yet, but I knew I would no longer sit quietly and be erased. The first warning wasn't mine. It was Valora's. And like most advice born from comfort, it came with honeyed words and the sharp sting of disappointment underneath. It was a warm Thursday when I stopped by her house. I hadn't planned on telling her anything, but sometimes the weight of silence presses too hard on the chest. She offered tea in her sunroom, that same blue china she'd had since her anniversary trip to Charleston. The ceiling fan hummed gently, and birds argued in the trees outside. It should have felt peaceful. It didn't. "I've been meaning to ask," Valora said, spooning sugar into her cup. "You look tired. Something wrong?" I hesitated. Then the words fell out, not in anger, not in self-pity, just facts. The call, the money, the fake diagnosis, the trip, the trust. When I finished, she sat back slowly, fingers tapping the rim of her cup. "Lorene," she said softly, "I don't want to sound cold, but sometimes it's better to let things go. For the sake of peace." Peace. I looked at her and forced a smile. Peace built on silence isn't peace, it's denial. She meant well, I knew that. But people who've never been erased don't understand the urgency of claiming your own name. Later that week, I was watching Leora after school. She bounced through the front door, her backpack thudding to the floor, hair tangled from recess, and cheeks flushed with energy only a 7-year-old could carry. We colored together for a while, dragons and castles, not a princess in sight, and I almost forgot the ache under my ribs. Until she looked up from her drawing and asked, "Grandma, are you mad at Daddy?" I blinked. "Why do you ask that, sweetheart?" She shrugged. "You don't come over anymore, and Daddy says you're just resting a lot. Are you sick?" I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. "No, baby, I'm okay." She nodded, thinking. Then, quieter. "Do you still love him?" My hands stilled. I looked at her, this child who knew nothing of legal documents or financial betrayal, only that the people she loved weren't sitting at the same table anymore. I couldn't answer, not truthfully, so I reached out and smoothed her hair back. "Love doesn't disappear," I said, "but sometimes people walk far enough away that it stops following them." That night, after I dropped her off and returned home, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. My hand shook as I wrote. "Travis," the letter began, "you have 1 week to return what's mine. After that, you will meet someone you don't recognize." I didn't mail it. I folded it once, slipped it under the folder labeled Will, and pushed the drawer shut. It wasn't a threat, it was a countdown. The next morning, I drove to the courthouse. Not the grand main building downtown, but the smaller annex where I used to clerk during probate hearings. The parking lot was mostly empty, the air thick with spring humidity. Inside, I found Kim, now a paralegal, once a fresh-eyed intern I'd trained. She hugged me with genuine warmth. "I heard about what happened, Mrs. Bly. I've been following the posts. It's not right." "I need pamphlets," I said, "on estate fraud, elder financial abuse, legal definitions of undue influence." She didn't ask why, just handed me a stack of documents and a list of trusted attorneys. As I left, she called out, "If you ever want help filing something, I'll clear my schedule." In the car, I laid the brochures across the passenger seat. One caught my eye, a bold title in navy blue, "Protecting Your Legacy." I drove home without the radio, without thinking about Travis, without wondering if Callista would call, because I already knew they wouldn't. They had mistaken my restraint for surrender. The night before Travis's birthday, I pulled out an old wristwatch from a velvet box in the back of my closet. It wasn't expensive, just a simple silver-faced timepiece my late husband once wore when he coached baseball. I wrapped it in crisp paper, tied a modest ribbon, and before folding the tissue around it, I slipped in something new, A tiny recorder, no larger than a key fob. Fully charged. Ready. I knew what I was doing. I also knew it wasn't maternal. It was tactical. The dinner was at their place, a sleek, cold condo that felt more like a showroom than a home. Callista greeted me with her usual over-practiced sweetness. "Lorene, you made it. Travis'll be so happy." Happy? He'd been nothing but happy lately, hadn't he? The dining table was set for 4, though it was just us 3. Callista lit candles and talked about imported wine. Travis arrived a few minutes later, dressed like a man who had nowhere important to be. Soft button-up, no socks, the smug air of someone confident in his narrative. "Hey, Mom," he said, opening his arms like the past never happened. "You didn't have to bring anything." "I wanted to," I said. I handed him the wrapped box. He turned it over, curious, then gave me that familiar, disarming grin. "What is it, vintage cufflinks?" "Open it," I said. He did, and when he saw the watch, he chuckled. "You kept this?" "I thought you might want something meaningful," I replied. "Something real." Dinner was pleasant enough, in the way performances can be. But as the wine flowed, Travis got louder, looser. He laughed too hard at his own jokes, didn't bother checking his volume. At one point, he leaned back and said to Callista, "My mom still thinks I was sick, you know? Stage 4 cancer. Best performance I ever gave." She laughed. Not loud, not fully, but enough. I didn't react. I smiled, nodded, took another bite of overcooked salmon. Back home, I pulled the device from the gift box and plugged it into my laptop. The file was clear, loud, and damning. Travis's voice echoed through my quiet kitchen. That money was just sitting there. I mean, she's retired. What was she going to do with it? Take a cruise? She's lucky I didn't clean her out sooner. I paused, rewound, listened again. Best performance I ever gave. I sat there for an hour, headphones on, eyes dry, heart steady. No tears this time. I wasn't shocked anymore. I was documenting. The next day, while grabbing groceries, I saw David, my neighbor 2 doors down, former cop. Retired, but sharp as ever. He was leaving the gas station when I pulled in. We chatted for a moment, then he said, "Hey, weird thing. I saw Travis at the ATM yesterday. I don't mean to stir things, but he was mouthing off. Said something about, 'Few more tears and she'll hand over the house, too.' I didn't think it was my business, but, you okay?" I nodded slowly. "Do you remember exactly what he said?" "Most of it," David replied. "You want me to write it down?" "Better," I said. "Record yourself saying it, if it ever comes to that." He looked at me, surprised. Then he said, "Will do." Back home, I printed transcripts from the recording, made multiple backups, labeled every file, clipped every soundbite into its own folder. I pulled up my notes, timeline, screenshots, every lie cataloged with the precision of a courtroom exhibit. I called Ruth, an old colleague from my courthouse days. Discreet, sharp, still working in probate. "Ruth," I said, "I'm not asking you to take sides. I just need a list of attorneys, ones who don't blink when the name on the other side is family." She paused. "I've got 3. I'll text you. And Lorene?" "Yes?" "Whatever they did, don't let them get away with it." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That night, I gathered everything and slid it into a file folder. On the tab, I wrote one word. Enough. He thought this was a game. I was about to teach him what the rules really were. It was a Saturday morning when the envelope landed at my door. No name, no return address. Just a clean white package slipped through the mail slot like it belonged. At first, I thought it was another ad. But then, I noticed the seal. One I knew well. The legal firm Travis had mentioned back when I helped him and Callista draft their first lease agreement. I opened it. Inside was a draft of a will. My will. Only it wasn't. The paper looked official, formatted, notarized, complete with signature. My signature. Except it wasn't mine. And even if the strokes mimicked my hand, they missed the most important detail. My late husband and I had a private symbol, an asterisk we used next to our names in legal documents, a little mark only we understood. A way to say, this is us, no one else. It was missing. They hadn't just taken my money. They had tried to steal my death too. The heat that flushed through my chest wasn't panic. It was indignation. A fury so clean and sharp it made everything around me feel too quiet. I sat down slowly, letting the pages rest on the kitchen table like a body I was preparing for burial. That afternoon, I got another envelope. This time, digital. Callista had sent me a video message. No subject line, no text, just a file. I almost didn't open it. But something in me, curiosity or the need for one true thing, clicked it open. Her face appeared on screen, backlit by the sterile light of what looked like a guest bathroom. She looked pale, shaken. She didn't start with pleasantries. "Lorene," she said, voice thin. "I can't do this anymore." She looked away from the camera, then back. "Travis told me to sign the documents. He said you'd never fight it. That you were proud, and proud people stay quiet. He said it was already done, that you'd given it all up willingly." She wiped her face, and her hand trembled. "I was scared. I still am. But you deserve to know. I didn't think you'd ever find out." I paused the video. Then I rewound it and listened again. That night, I spread everything across the dining room table, my makeshift war room. Audio files, Instagram screenshots, bank documents, the forged will, Callista's video. I started building a master timeline, date by date, fact by fact. Not just to keep track, but to keep control. Each line I typed was like laying bricks, building a wall between what they'd tried to do and what I would not allow. The next morning, I made 3 calls. The first, to the attorney Ruth had recommended. A woman named Harris with a firm handshake and no tolerance for subtlety. "We'll start with a cease and desist, then we escalate," she told me. The second, to the county courthouse. I asked about filings, procedures, safeguards. The third, to a journalist I used to know back when I worked at the courthouse, a man named Daniel, who once told me, "You've got the sharpest instincts I've ever seen on the witness bench." "I've got something," I said, "and you're going to want to hear it." That afternoon, I printed copies of every piece of evidence and sealed them in envelopes. One for Travis, one for Callista. No return address, no explanation, just a note inside each. "This is your only warning. Next time, I speak in court." I took a walk afterward. Not far. Just a few blocks down the street, past homes I used to visit, lawns I used to trim, conversations I used to have when I was simply Travis's mother, Callista's maybe mother-in-law, Leora's grandma. In a shop window, I caught my reflection. For months, I hadn't recognized the woman staring back. She'd looked smaller, faded. But that day, I nodded. Not in satisfaction, in readiness. They had tried to erase me, but now I was going to write the ending. The courthouse smelled like old air and fresh paper. I hadn't walked through its front doors in nearly 8 years, but the floor still squeaked in the same spot near the bailiff's desk, and the waiting benches were just as uncomfortable as I remembered. But today, I wasn't sitting as a clerk. I was sitting as a woman ready to reclaim what had been stolen. Not just money, but voice, value, and truth. I wore a navy suit I hadn't touched in years, the one I used to save for court proceedings that mattered. My hands didn't tremble as I walked past Travis and Callista, seated with their attorney. He wouldn't meet my eyes. She did, for a moment, and then looked away. The judge, a woman about my age with steel gray hair and glasses that magnified nothing but her seriousness, called the case to order. The Kane attorney opened with pleasantries and a sickening tone of pity. "Your Honor, this is a matter of family misunderstanding, not fraud." Then it was my turn. I rose, unfolded my papers, and spoke. I presented the forged will, with its missing asterisk, the audio recording from the birthday dinner, The video Callista had sent me, the screenshots, the ATM transcript, the timeline that made their deceit airtight. I did not cry, but Travis did, when the judge interrupted his outburst mid-room. "Mr. Kane, you are not permitted to speak unless addressed directly." He turned red. Callista stared at the floor. After reviewing the materials, the judge spoke slowly and clearly. "This court finds sufficient evidence of coercion, fraud, and undue influence. All assets are to be restored to Ms. Lorene Bly immediately. Further civil proceedings may follow." And just like that, the gavel fell. But it wasn't justice that echoed. It was silence. Not the hollow kind, the relieved kind. Outside, the press was waiting. Microphones, flashbulbs. I said nothing. Just walked through them. Let them speculate. Travis stormed ahead, fuming. Callista trailed behind him, quiet. I didn't watch them go. Instead, I sat on a bench near the fountain out front, away from the cameras, and I let the weight slide off my shoulders. My eyes filled, not from grief, but from release. My name was mine again. 2 days later, I stood at the podium at the senior center. My old volunteer badge still worked. I didn't use a script. I didn't need one. "I'm not here today as a victim," I told the room. "I'm here as a reminder. They didn't just try to take my money. They tried to take my name, my dignity, my voice." There was a silence, then slow clapping from the back. A few phones lifted into the air. A clip of my talk ended up online. It caught fire. Not because I was eloquent, but because I was honest. Suddenly, I was getting calls from local reporters, invitations to speak on panels about elder rights. I declined most. That was never the goal. That evening, I walked past the shelf where the photo albums lived. I didn't open them. I didn't need to. I reached for a new folder labeled Next Chapter. Inside were court records, legal copies, my newly notarized estate plan. I filed them away, not for protection, but for closure. Then I closed the drawer. Not because I was done, but because I was whole. He tried to rewrite my ending, but I picked up the pen. The house was still. Not the kind of stillness that carries loneliness, but the kind that feels earned. As if the walls themselves had finally exhaled after months of holding their breath. Sunlight spilled across the floor, tracing the same wood grain I used to mop while humming lullabies. But this morning, I didn't clean. I wandered. Room by room, I took inventory. Not of furniture or valuables, but of what mattered now. I passed by photo frames, touching each one gently before lifting it down and placing it into a memory box I kept under my bed. I didn't throw anything away. I just released them. Released versions of me that no longer needed to stay on the walls. In the hallway, I paused by the mirror. "Some memories belong in the past," I said aloud, "even if they were once beautiful." Later that day, while sorting the bottom drawer of my desk, I found it. A small composition notebook with a faded blue cover. Travis's name was scribbled across the front in a child's handwriting, the S written backward. It was his third-grade journal. I'd kept it without thinking, packed away after one of his school projects. I flipped through pencil sketches of superheroes and crooked letters that spelled out dreams. Then I found the page. "When I grow up, I'll buy Mommy a big house, with a porch, and she'll never have to work again." I stared at it, read it twice, then closed the notebook. "He meant it once," I whispered. "That doesn't mean he means it now." And somehow, I was okay with that. That afternoon, Neve stopped by to drop off the finalized court papers. She brought flowers, yellow tulips, my favorite. She looked like a woman 10 years into her purpose. "You believed in me before anyone did," she said, handing me the documents. "Let me do the same for you." We sat on the porch. She talked about a scholarship she was starting for first-generation law students. I talked about lemon bars and the rose bush I needed to trim. And then she said something that landed deeper than she probably meant it to. "Your story changed more than just your life. You reminded people like me that quiet doesn't mean weak." My eyes welled. Not for what I lost, but for what I still had. Respect. Dignity. Legacy. That evening, as the cicadas hummed in the trees, I opened my laptop and updated my will. I included a small scholarship fund in my name, something modest for young women studying public service or law, something that might help someone stand a little taller one day when the world tries to push them down. I also wrote a letter to Leora. To be opened on your 18th birthday, I labeled the envelope. Inside, I wrote, "Never be afraid to stand up for what's right, even if it's against someone you love. Doing the right thing isn't easy, but it's always worth it. Be kind, be strong, and if you ever feel small, remember whose granddaughter you are." I sealed it, slid it into the back of the drawer behind the family photo albums. Before bed, I stepped outside with my watering can. The lavender bush was blooming again, even after a rough winter. I leaned down, pressed my hand to the soil. Cool, damp, alive. I stayed there a while, watching the sky lose color. I wasn't waiting for anything. I wasn't wondering what Travis was doing. I wasn't angry. I was simply here, present. I lost a son, but I found myself. And sometimes that's the only victory you need. Maybe the hardest truth I had to swallow was this. Love doesn't always mean loyalty, and sometimes protecting yourself means walking away from the very people you once built your world around. But if there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this. You are never too old to reclaim your voice. You are never too late to draw the line between sacrifice and self-respect. I let things slide for too long, thinking it was love. Turns out, love should never cost you your dignity. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever stayed silent just to keep the peace? Would you speak up if it meant losing family? Let me know in the comments, type 1, if this story touched your heart, or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like this video, I'd still love to know why. What part didn't sit right with you? If this video resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that speak to the strength, resilience, and quiet courage of everyday people.